really excited to bring on our next speaker. Absolute tour de force that she is. We're going to do things a bit differently as well, which excites me even more. Because if you have ever heard this lady speak before, like I say, we've done a few interviews with Stephen. Gemma's interviewed her as well. She's just a fountain of knowledge, and we're going to get more of her story and what she's gone through to get to this point. How we problem solve, how she deals with mindset to do what she's doing. Without further ado, guys, we're going to have a massive Q&A here. Give her a massive round of applause for Ellie Mckay.
Thank you.
It's like question time. Which seat would you prefer?
I feel like I'm on
I was going to say, well,
this
it's like we knew you were there. I've got you some water there. You've got you some there. It's the first time that we've done a Q&A of this sort of type, Strength to Succeed. And it's really good because if there's any questions that we have, we can do it live in the room. And there's loads of questions that I want to ask Ellie that's sort of orientated around what we're talking about over the next couple of days. But if we go on a tangent and a digress, which I have a strange feeling we definitely will, and we'll end up down one form of rabbit hole. If you do have a question at any point, as long as it's obviously relevant to what we're actually talking about there, make sure that you do pop your hands up because we will ask Ellie the questions. First question, obviously, to kick off, who are we? And tell me certainly what we've been up to this last couple of years.
Yeah, so Ellie Mckay, pleasure to be here. So most of you in the room who know me will know me through being a property developer, property investor. We've been full-time for less than 4 years, and we've very quickly built up our own multi-million pound property portfolio. I'm sort of famous for raising finance online, and particularly in LinkedIn. I raised £4 million within my first year. And it's really interesting when people kind of hear that and they perceive that to be successful. But for a big chunk of that journey, I was really struggling with my own mental health, which is why I'm so passionate about it. I was in a very dark place, if I'm being entirely honest, for best part of a decade. I was on all sorts of heavy duty medication for anxiety and depression. I used to have really bad panic attacks. And then some days it was literally a struggle just to leave the house. So when we talk about success, something that I'm so passionate about is getting to the crux at what success really means. And that's very individual, that's down to perception. But for me, it certainly isn't relevant to how many properties I have in my portfolio or how much money we have in the bank, because some of the wealthiest people I know are not what I would class as successful. They are having affairs, they've got gambling addictions, alcohol addictions, sex addictions, drug addictions. They don't see their kids, they've not got a relationship with their family. And for me, and my own set of standards in terms of what a successful life looks like, that isn't one. So happy to sort of share my own experiences, the vulnerabilities, the lessons I've learned along the way. And if that can help or inspire anyone in this room, then it's been a worthwhile trip.
100%. Something I said very early on in this morning, and I see it time and time again, there's one catalyst moment when we have to draw a line in the sand and to go, things need to change. Yeah. If you don't mind sharing, what was your moment when you said to yourself that from that dark place, things need to change? And how did you sort of gear up in order to move from that one place into the positive side of it?
That is a brilliant question, and I'm going to give you a couple of different answers to that, because there definitely is that moment, and I can remember when my moment was, but it's not just one moment, and I'll explain why. I've had many of those moments, because it's not like the light bulb just goes on and it's eureka, I've solved this. We stand up, we fall back down again. We stand up, we fall back down again. But the first moment where I knew something had to change was, like probably a lot of people in this room, when I did some property education, which was about 4 years ago. One of my mentors, who's still a really close friend of mine and soon to be a business partner, he said something with me on day one, and he shared a story. And sometimes certain stories just land with you in a different way. And he was talking about a guy called Darren Hardy. And for anyone who doesn't know, Darren Hardy was the editor of Success magazine. And he went to his mentor, the legend of personal development, Jim Rohn, with a 40-page list, front and back, detailing his perfect woman. Every, how she looked aesthetically, every attribute, culture, literally everything. And he went to Jim and said, how do I get a woman like that in my life? And Jim just looked at him and said, Darren, you're asking the wrong question. The question that you need to ask yourself is, who do I need to become? And that was just so powerful for me. Darren went through his list in fine detail and asked himself the question, did he have those attributes? And the answer was no, so he set about gaining those qualities. And when I looked in that accountability mirror, when it's just you in that mirror, there's nobody to bullshit, I looked at myself and I thought, am I the sort of person that I would want to do business with? To be successful in property, you need to know how to raise finance and go out there and put yourself out in social media and come to events like this and have the confidence to speak to people in person. And I was literally in the fetal position about 2 days before, having a panic attack at the thought of going into a very small group of people to do property training. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is that your business can only grow at the same extent that you do, but it was about so much more than just business. It was just about having the attributes to even, the skills and the characteristics to even get out the door and start the ball rolling. So yeah, that was a really pivotal moment. I looked in that accountability mirror and I realised that nobody was coming to save me. I mean, it's all fine and well coming to an event like this, and Stephen's the first one to say the knowledge is fantastic, you need that, but without implementing it, without actually taking the action, then it's completely futile. And that was sort of day one of the beginning of the rest of my life. I had to really change, and a lot more so than the business stuff. The business stuff I always found relatively easy, but the real deep work, that was the challenge.
So speaking of challenges, how, given that the levels of success that you're getting, Ellie, when you were presented with any challenge, whether it's in work, whether it's in personal, I find that ultra successful people always deal with them with the same sort of way. Mm-hmm. So how do you go about dealing with challenges when life throws you melons? What's your initial, right, this is how I need to do that? So
it's funny now because a challenge might be brokering a multi-million-pound deal, but this is where the context comes into it. The challenge on day one for me was getting out of bed. The challenge on day one was brushing my teeth. And I used to throw myself cookies. I'm like, right, if you can just get out of bed, just all you need to do is just brush your teeth. This is literally the conversations I used to have with myself. And then I brushed my teeth and I was like, you don't need to do anything else. And I was like, well, you've brushed your teeth now. Just get changed. That's all you have to do. Just get yourself changed. That's absolutely fine. You don't need to do anything else. And then once I got changed, it's like, well, you're up now. You might as well go downstairs. You don't need to do anything. You can just lie on the sofa, but just get yourself downstairs. And that was literally how I would do it. And it was really small steps, because I might go against the grain here of what a lot of people in the personal development space, because when you feel like shit, when you are feeling like life is futile and you would rather be dead, and you go on social media and everyone's absolutely smashing it and doing bloody marathons and ice baths and all the sort of stuff that I do now, it's fucking annoying. Like, it's really fucking annoying. If you're just trying to get out of bed and everyone else is smashing it, the reality is, no matter what we're meant to feel, that can be really, really demotivating. So it's about doing things in gradual, incremental stages. And one of the most powerful things that I did was surround myself with a different group of people. And everyone's at different points financially. So to give you a bit of context, 4 years ago, when I was going through this, we didn't have any money. I had been made redundant whilst I was on maternity leave and was in a situation where I was actually claiming job seekers allowance. We'd spent every last penny of our redundancy money to pay for our property education. So I wasn't in a position to go and spend 20 grand on masterminds and things like that. But what I could do was start listening to podcasts, to start changing what I was listening to and changing that environment, turning the news off. Because the news, bad news sell. You're never going to feel better about yourself by watching the news. I think we can all agree on that. And then I started listening to audiobooks, and this was before I'd even walked through the door to do the property training. And then having that community of like-minded people, again, it wasn't about property, it wasn't about the business stuff, it doesn't matter what sector you're in. Getting around people that had the commonality was that they all wanted to achieve more from life. Again, I'm not talking about money in the bank, but we all wanted to become the best versions of ourselves, whatever that meant to us. And I suppose I took those steps very gradually, and over time, the compound effect makes such a huge difference. And that's why I'm so passionate about the fact that you don't need to go from 0 to 100 straight away. You need to have that inner grit and just make yourself a pledge that you're going to do a little bit better than you did the day before. And that was it. That was the only goal I set myself. There wasn't 100 targets. You have to get yourself out of the hole sometimes before you can really start focusing down on what you want to achieve, because at that point I didn't believe I was capable of achieving anything. But by taking one foot in front of the other and taking that continual action, it really did start to compound over time. And like when I started putting myself out there in social media, which social media is something that I'm pretty good at now. I've got a reasonable sized following, and there is always this perception that it's all right for you, but it absolutely wasn't all right for me. And when I started posting, I was feeling like absolute shit. I remember my first ever LinkedIn video. It was like a 90-minute video. It was a pile of wank. It's been long deleted. You will not find any trace of it. This video literally took me all day to do. And some people might argue that that's not a good use of your time, but for me that was very much a necessary part of the process, because it was a case of, facing the fear and doing it anyway, and doing something that I didn't previously believe that I was capable of doing. But to answer you, to sort of go back to when I said at the start, Dean, that you have more than one of those moments, light bulb moments. The reality is that we will keep experiencing blow after blow, grenade after grenade, and until we cultivate that mindset, there are going to be times where we end up back on the floor. It's not like a Hollywood moment where that's it, brilliant, it's all done. And a couple of months after I was on this journey, I was actually at a Grant Cardone event. It was a brilliant event. It was really high energy. And one of the topics was mental health. And he was pretty much saying, I think he's a naturopath, and he was pretty much saying that he doesn't agree with medication, and we all have it within ourselves to cultivate this mental resilience. And I was like, yes, I agree with that. It's mind over matter, 100%. I'm on board with this. Chucked out my 200 milligram of amitriptyline and God knows what else I was on. And it turns out that's not a great idea. Turns out you shouldn't do that. And within about 4 or 6 weeks of making that decision, I probably felt the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. I was as close to suicide as I could have been, really, without kind of taking any direct action. And actually, I was just talking to some of the guys through while we were eating lunch about this, because if you've never experienced that rock bottom, it can be hard to perhaps resonate with what I'm talking about here. In the past, when I would hear of somebody committing suicide when they had young children, I used to think they were selfish. I used to think they obviously didn't love their family enough, because why would they leave their family members in that situation? And as a mum with 3 young children, it's interesting how when you're at rock bottom, how you see things entirely differently. Because when I felt like that, and I was considering the impact on my children, and how it would leave my husband and my wider family feeling, I knew that they would experience pain in the short term, but I truly believed that by not being there, they would all have a far better quality of life without me, and that I was a toxic influence on those people's lives. So when I say success was getting out of bed, it really was, and it wasn't an overnight fix, and I don't think it is an overnight fix, and that's why it's a lot easier to take the medication, And that's why it's a lot easier to have the glass of wine or take the drugs or watch the porn or whatever else we do to sedate. And whilst I'm not here to judge anyone, I've made more mistakes in life than I care to remember. The reality is it's like anything, isn't it? It's like fitness or anything else. There's just no shortcuts. You've got to do the real hard inner work. And I caught the back end of what Carl was saying, the previous speaker, and there was a lot of it really landed with me, because you don't perhaps recognise just how far you've come in your own journey, but there's no way that I would dream of speaking to another human being the way that I've spoken to myself from time to time. So it's having that mindfulness when that devil on your shoulder starts with the downplaying. One of the most powerful things I've ever done actually is practicing gratitude. What I'm grateful for, and back then it would have been something as simple as actually getting out of bed. It wasn't a case of wasn't acquiring a property portfolio or anything like that. And journaling the process too, which I found hugely powerful, because we don't recognise how far we've come. We do focus on the negatives, and it's always easier to look at where we want to be in life, or comparing ourselves to other people that we perceive as more successful or further down the path that we want to travel. So when you actually look back on that journal and look at how far you've come, even within a couple of weeks, what you've learned, what you're doing differently, what you've improved, it can be really powerful motivation.
Spot on. There's a few things that you've said there, Ellie, about goal setting, about chunking things down,
yes,
and taking that one step at a time. Obviously, sometimes people try to set the goal on top of Mount Everest and try to climb it without getting to the shop to get the right footwear,
yes,
to get the right books on the best path to take up the mountain, etc., etc. So taking that one step at a time. And something else that you touched upon there, you clearly focus on your performance, and you trust that the results will happen down the line.
Yes.
Which I think is massively crucial. And what kind of leads me into a question, clearly going on a digress and a path here, but absolutely touching on what you've just said there, about taking control of your day, setting up your morning, and talking about that thing on your shoulder, the internal dialogue, the internal monologue that we have, that quite a few people are unaware that actually that goes on.
Yes.
When you're in that bar and you see someone really fit over the other side of it, and this fucking voice out of nowhere goes, okay, no, she's fit. But it wasn't you that said it. It's this voice inside your head. Internal monologue and internal dialogue, and listen to the stuff that you're telling yourself. Yeah. That conversation that you're having in the mirror, accountability, you touched upon journaling and things like that. Interesting to note is the first 20 minutes of the day, I know you believe in this, is your most crucial. What is your morning routine to set you up for the day, so you know that you can go to bed that night knowing, do you know what? From a mindset point of view, I've smashed today. Do you have a sort of a ritual that you do in order to set up your day?
Yeah, it's quite funny. When I go to bed, I always just think, what are the 3 things that I want to achieve the next day? And it doesn't actually matter whether I achieve those or not. It's setting the day off with the intention. And in the morning, I always reflect on those. I always think of one thing that I'm grateful for. I do my journaling in the morning as well. I usually do my social media post, and I now am one of those people. I have a nice bath. And every morning at 6:30, when I'm going out to the garden, and it's pitch black and it's icy, I do question my sanity. But I've got to say, for anyone who struggles with anxiety or moods like I do, I always joke my husband's really stoic, whereas I'm kind of like da, 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 and I'm looking around at the women, they're all kind of nodding a little bit. But yeah, the cold water immersion is by far one of the best things that I've ever done as well. And the other non-negotiable I've got, and we were talking about this, Dean, because I had some health challenges back end of last year. I went from sort of training 5-6 days a week to not training at all. And exercise for me for the endorphins is just an absolute must. But it doesn't have to be training for an Ironman. It can just be going out for a 30-minute walk every day in nature. It really doesn't matter. But just set your own standard and stick to it. You're master of your own destiny. Like, for example, I'm training for an ultra. I've never really ran more than half marathon distance in my life, so I've committed to doing an ultra just for that accountability on the 2nd of July. But I know I can't go from 0 to 100. I've literally not ran more than 2 miles for 6 months. So the goal I set myself for the month of January was just to go out and do 3 5K runs as a minimum every week, a bit of stretching, and literally that's it, and then build it up incrementally. So yeah, doing the ice baths, the journaling, practicing a bit of gratitude. But I think it's just having that standard that you set yourself, having that discipline and keeping to it, whatever that means to you. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. Yes, take motivation and inspiration from it. But if you're finding that you're getting demoralised when you're looking at what other people are doing on social media, I don't mind admitting in the past I've just unfollowed those people. If it was having a detrimental impact on my mental health, because rightly or wrongly I was comparing myself to them and feeling like I wasn't achieving enough, or somehow that I was a failure because I wasn't able to look at her, Gemma, for God's sake, she's a good friend of mine and she's out running 100 miles. I can't compete with that. I take inspiration from that. But if you're finding yourself looking at what other people are doing and feeling demotivated, then just stick to your own plan and build it up gradually. It's you versus you. You're only ever trying to be better than the person that you were the day before. Doesn't matter what anyone else is doing.
And protecting your, I call it the mind garden, and protecting your mind garden. We were speaking about it to a chap earlier on, and I said it to you, Ellie, there, about the agenda. When I say the agenda...
New World Order?
No, that's a separate one. On a morning, it was actually while we were in Dubai. We had a chat with Kirk, and he worded it beautifully. He basically said, when you're looking at your emails in the morning, you're allowing somebody else's agenda to be forced upon you.
100%.
When you're looking at someone on social media, that's their agenda. When you're, et cetera, and you touched upon the news there. I know you're very you're precious with your time and how you spend your time. So cutting out the negativity
100%.
and putting yourself in that positive place and talking about your network, if you can just touch upon that, of how important that is in order to keep you on the right path, I guess.
Oh, you know what? It's absolutely massive. And I'm not here to preach to anyone. I make as many mistakes as the next person, and it's easy to get down rabbit holes with stuff. We're living in very strange times at the moment, in case anyone's missed it. You know, the last 2 years have been pretty crazy. And I found myself, I joined Telegram, and I just found myself lost about a week, you know, and I wasn't doing any of the things that I advise other people to do. By the time my husband was getting up at 5:30, I'm watching a 12-year-old Afghani girl getting ripped from her mother's arms and given to a Taliban warlord, and I've seen a child in Australia having a fit because of the vaccine. I've seen this going on and that going on. I did not take any of my own advice, and I was a nervous wreck. You know, and you've got to constantly check in with yourself and test and measure. It's not about having all the answers all of the time, but it's having the self-awareness to keep checking in on what you're doing and asking yourself, is this serving you? You know, what are you getting from that? Was that helping my day? Was I showing up as the best version of me, the best mother to my children, the best wife to my husband, to the best leader to my team of staff? Absolutely not. So you 100% need to protect that emotional bank account. And that's very different to being ignorant to what's going on in the world. I'm not telling people that you can't keep up to date with current affairs, but it's being very protective about what you let in and when you let it in, and really building that mental resilience. And to go back to, you know, it's about perception, and it's about making sure that you're having the biggest impact on yourself and other people, and not living in fear for a future that may or may not happen, which I think we can all do within quite a lot of situations, whether it's business, personal, current affairs, whatever it is. It's a bit of a tangent there.
No, 100%. Yeah. Stephen says quite a funny story. It's not funny. It's not funny at all, actually. I don't know why I said it's funny, because I laugh at it because I get it. Because people in the morning will, look into the news, see a load of bit of fear. They'll have people on the social media giving it a bit of fear. They'll have, they'll read a good murder book, bit of fear. And if you again just to batter our mum and dad a bit more today, you know, my mum every night she puts the horror channel on, and she wonders why she's just a bit anxious. Steve says that, you know, people wonder why they've got a bit of anxiety by putting themselves in that sort of in that environment.
It's so true.
With you and family, how is this new sort of way of thinking, going back from what you've gone through previously to where you are now, especially having younger children? How has that impacted on the way you are as a parent? I know someone like one of the chaps I was speaking to earlier on. How do you protect yourself around family members or friends that are not necessarily on the wavelength of positivity, and if you've got negative people around you that are close to you?
I don't have negative people in my circle. That's a reality, family or otherwise, and that might sound quite brutal, but I don't or minimise the contact with them. My social media now, my online world, my offline world, it's just full of people that are there to motivate and inspire me. You know, I'm listening constantly to podcasts and audiobooks that are going to elevate me, they're going to educate me, they're going to empower me, they're going to help me become a better person. My eldest daughter, Sienna, you know, she's 9, and one of the, like, we talk about success, like this story to me is success, because I was doing public speaking was always a massive fear of mine, and I was talking at an event in Glasgow. This was probably about a year ago now, and it was going to be in front of like 400 people, which at the time was the biggest audience I'd ever spoken about. And the kids were in the car, in the back of the car. We were staying at my dad's house, who lived in Scotland, and I was sort of chatting to my husband. He was giving me a bit of a pep talk. I was like, oh my God, like 400 people, I can't do this. And he's like saying, come on, you know, like all your mindset work and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Pulled myself together and went on stage and, you know, tapped into my higher self, and I absolutely smashed it. And at the same time, my husband had taken the kids to like this big indoor play area. And there was like one of these big climbing walls. And Sienna had kept getting up so far and then coming back down, and she was getting up so far and coming back down. And she went back to my husband in tears, and she's like, I can't do it, I'm so scared. And I just sent Mark a little video that someone had sent me getting on stage in front of like 400 people, and everyone was like giving me a round of applause. And he showed it to Sienna, and Sienna just looked at it and she was like, I'm so proud of Mummy. She's like, I remember what Mummy says. Mummy says that being brave doesn't mean that you don't get scared. Being brave means that you get scared and you do it anyway. She just went up to this climbing wall and went right to the top of it. And I just thought, oh, it's amazing. I'm literally bringing my children up to have a life without limits. And that wasn't my reality when I was growing up. You know, my eldest, she knows all about the law of attraction. She knows about positive energy. She recognises negative talk when other family members do it, and she actually like corrects them on it. She knows that your thoughts become your reality, and that's, you know, that's fantastic. But I have had to be pretty brutal because it takes a long time. When you first go on this personal development journey, you feel like you've been shown a different world. And to be fair, I think we have, but there can be a tendency to want to bring everybody along with you. And it's done from a well-intentioned place. But not everybody wants to travel down the same path as you do. And people don't really want it ramming down their throat, which is what I've came to realise. And also, people don't always want solutions to their problems. They just want to rant. They just want to moan. You know, everyone thought we were mental when we got involved in property. There's no money to be made in property. It's a scam. It's a scam. The training's a scam. If they were that successful, they wouldn't be teaching it. They wouldn't need to teach it. What about Brexit? I should be doing all that when the kids are older. My youngest was only a few months old at the time. But we refused to be judged by their limitations. And now the same naysayers are coming up and patting us on the back and saying, we always knew you could do it. I'm thinking, no, you fucking didn't. No, you didn't. Now they want a loan. They're trying to tap me up for a loan, you know. So, yeah, no, it's really interesting. But what I've also had to realise is that I'm the one that's changed. I used to have friends and we used to love nothing more than sitting having a good bitch. I'm going to be completely honest. And, you know, moaning about our job or moaning about this. Never changing it, never doing anything about it. And then all of a sudden I went on this crazy journey. And at first, people found it was fine. We were just doing like 1 or 2 flips, and that was okay. But the more that we started achieving professionally, the more properties we started buying, the more finance we started raising, the more that challenged their own limitations. And yeah, I found very quickly that my social circle started to change. And now I only really want to be around people who support me, whatever that means. They don't necessarily have to be on the same trajectory. I don't want an echo chamber. It's good to, to have a broad network of people in your life, but I can't stand negativity. But we need to embrace that fire and that fuel as well. So when the best thing somebody can say to me is, "You can't do that," I think, well, watch.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, to do with that, you were saying there about like almost victim mentality about saying and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
I guess more hard-hitting questions for you, Ellie, unfortunately for me here. Here we go.
Oh, God.
I know. It's and again, obviously we're at different journeys. Everyone in this room is at different points in their life, whether they're just just new into sort of mindset and whatnot. But it's about that taking responsibility, and that's hard. And that, don't get me wrong. And how much responsibility do you take for everything that's gone on, I guess? And you were saying about using things to fuel you, because that's sometimes hard when people will let it consume them, as opposed to letting things fuel you. So how much do you allow things that you've gone through in order to fuel you, and like taking that responsibility to say you are in control, because you are in control of everything that you do, and it's clear to see that. So
yeah, one of the best books I've read was Jocko Willick's, I think it's Extreme Ownership. I take 100% accountability for everything that goes on in my life. Like, there will always be so many valid reasons why people should fail. And they are valid reasons. 2016, a company fucked us over with their electrical business. Came down to the wire whether or not we could keep trading. We paid 18 lads that were working for us at the time, knowing that we wouldn't get paid ourselves. We took a bank loan out to make sure that they all got paid. Then my gran got a terminal diagnosis. My sister got sectioned. We found out my father-in-law had cancer, and he passed away within 3 months of that happening. Sometimes it just feels like it's one thing after another after another. I had postnatal depression. I had a 3-month-old baby. We were struggling to keep a roof over our head at the time. My husband was booked in for the snip because we were done. Mentally, I was fucked. That was on the Monday, and then the Friday before, I found out I was pregnant. Yeah, we're my third and very final. Little Sammy the swimmer, we call him. So, yeah.
Fucking hell, you're going to embarrass him. 18th birthday. Hello, Sammy.
Oh, you're Sammy the swimmer. So, yeah, there is never a good time to get started with any of this stuff. But ultimately, every poor decision I've ever taken has led me to be where I am today. But if something doesn't go right, there's always got to be an element. For me, when I was in victim mentality, it was the world's fault. That's not going to get you anywhere. It was this company's fault. It was my friend's fault. It was my mum's fault. I had a shit upbringing. It was to do with that. It was to do with emotional abuse, this kind of abuse. It's just getting you nowhere. You're just papering over the cracks. So I think when I realised that I was exactly where I deserved to be in life, no more and no less, that's when things really started to change. I was probably 2 stone heavier than I am now. I was having a panic attack. Struggling to leave the house. I was on job seekers allowance. I was a complete mess. I used to be a high-performance person. Back when I was in my early 20s, I was responsible for 100 people, and then I'm pushing my double pram into the job centre. I was ashamed. I was absolutely ashamed of where I was in my life. But each and every person in this room has got their own story. They've got their own set of challenges. I don't think I've had it harder than anyone else. There'll be people who've had it a lot tougher than I am. But it's about your perception. And that's another thing as well when it comes to mental health. And I think it's quite important to say. We were talking about Robin Williams just through there as well. Because we look at other people who have the perfect life. from the outside, at one point, when we were starting to do well in property, it looked like we had everything, nice house, nice cars, 3 beautiful children. I've got a husband who loves me, successful businesses. But yet I felt empty inside. So that's why it's so important to make the point that success is about so much more than what social media projects. You don't know what anyone else is going through. Where you are now is not where you need to be, and it doesn't necessarily need to be where you are in the future, because one thing that we all have in common in this room, we all have our own backstory, but each and every person in this room has got a spotless future. And whenever we can flip that switch and reframe what the future could look like, we're opening ourselves up to opportunity.
That's massively powerful, Ellie. Like you say, I was saying there that I don't want to be, certainly, and I know I know you won't be. I've said there's no way I'm getting to my deathbed with any what ifs, could have done, should have done, would have done. And it's about, in what you've just said there, in a sentence, spotless future going forward. We can go out this door today and be exactly the person that we want to be, with just putting them things in place, and about looking at things slightly differently.
The more I've focused on myself, I used to think that would, if you'd have said this to me 5 years ago, I'd have thought this would have sounded like a selfish statement. But the more I focus on myself, the better my life has become. When I realised that by working on myself, as cheesy as that may sound, that is the best thing I can do for my family. That's the best thing I can do for my 3 young children. It's the best thing I can do for my husband. It's the best thing I can do for my business. Back to that statement, your business can only grow at the same extent that you do. It's not even about business. Some of you in this room may not have businesses, but it's the best gift that you can give the people that you love is to sort yourself out. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially. The more I've worked on myself, the easier I've found it to raise finance, to attract business opportunities, because people follow people that are going somewhere. They don't follow people that are still in their house having panic attacks. That's the reality of it. So the thing I had to work on was getting myself from the fetal position and out of that door. And then you can start to build.
Absolutely, and like Carl said, that fight, flight, freeze moment, you're the type of person that tackles challenges head on, and quite a lot of us as human intention would be to sometimes ostrich away from a situation. When Jack Canfield says, when you do the hard things, everything else becomes easy. Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult to do the hard things because we don't want to go there, because we create that anxiety gap of that place over there is more painful than we're in now, so actually I won't deal with it, which obviously spirals into all of that, but to do with the levels of success that you've gained, Ellie, like what do you believe is one of the fundamental reasons to get to there? What do you think it takes to flip that light bulb? And it's, I guess that comes back down to that persistence as well. And
yes,
there's a question in there, but there's an elaboration to it.
No, I'm fascinated by this. This is one of the reasons I set up my podcast. And through my podcast, I've had the privilege of interviewing some phenomenal people, not just business people. I've had authors, I've had athletes, I've had, boxers. And they've all got one thing in common, and they've got the mental resilience. Now, the majority of, I'm not saying this has to be the case, but the majority of people who get to the height of success within whatever their profession is, they've got that resilience. They have hit rock bottom. They've got that tenacity. And I think quite often you have to have a bit of a screw loose. I always quote, there's all these amazing philosophers, and I always quote the all-time great, which is, Rocky Balboa, of course. It's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how many times you keep getting back up. Because I tell you what, problems don't go away. The bigger you get, the bigger your challenges. But one of my other favourite quotes is back to Jim Rohn, Darren Hardy's mentor, is don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. And that's something that all of my guests have in common. When I study the millionaires, the multimillionaires, the billionaires, but they keep going. They don't start and stop. It's that compound effect. Even if you want to stop, just slow right down. Have the break. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be. I don't subscribe to the hustle and grind mentality. Quite the opposite of it. I've not got into business to not see my 3 children. I've got 3 kids and 2 puppies. They're the epicenter of my universe. But it's keeping going. It's keeping that momentum going, even if it's just baby steps. Don't stop. Keep going, little bit by little bit. Know you're on the right path. Surround yourself with the right people. Make sure you're absorbing the right information. And I tell you what, good things will happen.
I'm going to open up the floor here. If there's anybody got a question that they'd like to ask Ellie, whether it's something that maybe that's happened to do with you, or how she deals with a certain scenario or anything like that, we're going to open the floor at that point. Coming down there, Andrew, because we are recording this.
I was just wondering who your actual mentor was. Did you go forward to get a mentor?
Yeah, I've had quite a few mentors, and still do. Still something I continually do. But yeah, when I did my training initially, it was with a guy called Paul McFadden and Billy Farrell. They were based in Scotland.
Any questions? Any questions from the floor before we carry on? At the back there, Gareth, we're on. Hold on.
Hi, Ellie.
Hiya.
So I want to know, what is your vision and what does the future hold for you?
Oh, fantastic question. I love it. Well, it's to get the property business. One of my business goals is to have the property business up to 8 figures within the next 2 years. This year, we're looking to add 5 million in assets to our own property portfolio. But the biggest one for me is by the end of the year to have the business automated in a way that we can work anywhere in the world. At the minute, we're still very much working in the business. The business is very dependent on us. We would like to be working on the business so that next time I'll be zooming in when we're having one of these conferences, because I'll be there on the beach in Dubai, you know. And that's what it's all about for me. It's about that work-life balance. It's about enjoying the time with the children when they're young, experiencing different places, different cultures, and just living life on their terms. In terms of more sort of personal goals, I've signed up to do an ultra on the 2nd of July, which I'm shitting myself about because I can't run 3 miles at the minute since I've been injured. And I'm really looking at this year, my number 1 priority above all else is walking the walk with a lot of this stuff. It's putting my health and well-being at the forefront. I've given up alcohol for the year, not for any other reason that I was looking at the one thing that could potentially get me to the next level. I want to sharpen up. I want to be the best version of myself. So yeah, I'm looking to do that. Very interestingly, all the gut health, I've been down a rabbit hole for the last couple of weeks with that. That's something that I plan on taking really seriously. So it was great to hear Carl reaffirming the importance of all of that kind of thing. Because and also just to keep leveling up continually. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. The minute I'm struggling to do a 5K run, I really want to get out there and smash those goals. But yeah, you never know. I might be doing a 100 miler with Gemma next time she does a crazy challenge.
Was that a 200 miler there?
Yeah, that was
200 miler. She said it here and there.
This is how it starts. Chinese whispers.
Got a question over here with Scotty.
Hi, Ellie.
Hiya.
I'm Scott. We spoke over lunch briefly, which is really interesting to get to know you. Thank you for that. I guess from the open conversation we had over lunch about us both being in a little bit of a fog over the last few years, and I myself in about 2015.
Yeah.
I think my biggest challenge when I was in that rabbit hole was about when you talk about surround yourself with the people that you'd either like to become or the future that you'd like to see. What's the first step to that? Because that was probably my biggest challenge, and certainly to try and resonate with people in the room. I'm not quite sure how I actually got there, so people have asked me that question, and it just happened, but it probably didn't. So I just wanted to throw that question to you, of two people maybe sitting in the room thinking, that's all well and good, you've made positive change, but how do I get from being in the hole to climbing out of that hole? I know you've talked about little steps and baby steps. I've done that part of just get up out of bed, just have a bit of breakfast, just go for a little walk, and that's it. That's me for the day. Yeah. How do you then just look at new social circles, the concentric circles? What advice might you be able to give on that, please?
Yeah, brilliant. So, no, great question, Scott. So it could be, depends what your financial situation is, but like I was saying before about the podcasts and the audiobooks and starting to get a little bit of motivation and inspiration through things at a grassroots level like that. But the power of community cannot be underestimated. Coming to events like this where you're in a room full of people that are clearly of a similar mindset, that know that there's more to life and perhaps just not sure how to get it. Getting around the likes of Stephen and people that are motivational. For me, that was hugely powerful. I mean, we are a bit crazy. I wouldn't necessarily we don't do things by halves. I did join high-level masterminds and things like that just for the power of, they say your network's your net worth. I wish I could think of a better expression. That's probably the closest to what I mean. But for me, again, it doesn't come down to the money side of it. I always like to be around people that are further down the path I want to travel. Like, for example, when Stephen did his back-to-back Ironman, he did a Facebook Live. So this is a little tip here, by the way, guys, right? Next time Stephen does a Facebook Live about one of these things, if you jump on it, don't comment, right? Do not comment. Because he was there, I remember it was a Sunday night. I'd never ran more than about a couple of miles in my life. And I was there with my glass of wine. I just had my Sunday dinner, and I saw Stephen was live, and I think he was 24 hours after he'd finished his crazy challenge. And anyway, I was there commenting. He was talking about the mindset and going into the doldrums, and when you think you've went as far as you can, you've not even tapped into your 40%. And I'm going, I'm sat here on my wine, but yeah, I had extra Yorkshire puddings, and all of this sort of thing. And my friend Liz, she was also on it. She's going, oh, me too, I've got a glass of wine. And so we were like commenting like selfies with the wine going, so turns out that's not the cleverest of ideas, because then Stephen's like, right, Ellie Mckay, half marathon by the 16th of December. I was like, shit. He's just publicly called me out. There's 1,000 people on this live. I was like, I cannot get out of this. It turns out that Stephen's coach, Coach Carr, as he called him, is actually really good friends with our business partner. There's 3 of us, my husband and another Mark. They're both called Mark. And Ronnie, Stephen's coach, turns out is good friends with our business partner, which was just the most bizarre thing when we realised that. So straight away, I got a coach. And the reason I share that, because some people are like, oh, it's only half marathon. Well, for me, that was a huge deal. But if I just said to my group of friends who we couldn't run a mile between us that I was doing even a 5K, they'd be like, oh my God. Well, I didn't need that. Do you know what I mean? I needed to be around people that are doing triathlons and running ultras and things like that, because then not that I was necessarily planning on taking the fitness to that extreme, but I'm around that kind of mindset and seeing what's possible and what have you. So whenever I'm trying to do anything in life, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a paid coach or mentor, but I always look for somebody that I resonate with, that has got more experience in that area, and I try to learn from them, basically. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but I just found getting around people that were uplifting and further down the path, whether that was property, whether that was mindset, whether it's fitness, which is why I always have more than one coach. At the moment, I've got 3 coaches. I'm in 3 different masterminds. I've got one for personal brand and marketing, one for property, and one for business. Because I don't believe in just learning off one person. I like to look at a wide range of people and take the best things from the best people. But again, it's all about perception. So many people that look at what we've achieved in property and they think that that's great. And again, it's down to being grateful for where you are. I'm hugely proud of what we've achieved within a short space of time. But I'm also surrounding myself with people that are light years in front of where I am. And I think that's quite important too, and I'm always listening to their language, how they talk, what are their behaviours, what are their morning routines, what are they doing that's the same. Well, hang on, that's like everybody I've spoke to keeps mentioning journaling. Maybe there's something in this, or they keep banging on about nutrition. Maybe I should stop eating pizza 5 nights a week. which is tough for me. So yeah, just continually surrounding yourself with a different way of thinking until it becomes the new normal. Like I remember, this is more to do with the business sense, but I remember the first time I was introduced to a millionaire and I was like, oh my God, like what's a millionaire going to want to speak to me for? And like now my entire network's made up of multi-millionaires and billionaires. You know, it just becomes the new normal.
2 questions to end on for you, Ellie. And
Yes.
the first one would be, if you were to go back to tell your childhood self, knowing what you know now, to start this crazy thing called life again,
Yeah.
what would you tell that child? And secondly, if there's people in this room today that are going through whatever struggles or challenges that they might be going through in life, what advice would you give them as a parting message from yourself?
Great questions. The first one's going to sound like a cop-out, but I wouldn't advise myself to do anything differently. I've made many mistakes. I've done things that I'm ashamed of. I've fallen flat on my face more times than I care to remember. But I also know I've learned more through those mistakes and more through those challenging times than through any of my successes and through my wins. You know, every obstacle is an opportunity to learn and grow. And I know it doesn't always feel like that at the time. And if you had said that to me back in 2016 when we were trying to keep a roof over our head, you may have got a punch in the face. But on reflection, the learnings that I've got from those dark times have been absolutely invaluable. So as much as it's been tough, it's been painful, there's been blood, sweat and tears, I genuinely wouldn't change anything, because I couldn't be happier with who I've become as a person and where my life's at just now. So, bit of a cop-out, but that's the honest answer for that one. For anyone that's struggling, I just want you to know it's not permanent. It can seem very permanent. And that's why getting through the day sometimes truly is success. But these tough times, they don't laugh. And if you keep putting one foot in front of the other and know that there's people out there who do care about you, that you do have a spotless future, and yeah, life is what we make it. So speak to someone if you're struggling. Reach out, connect with me on social media. I'm always open to jumping on a Zoom if someone's really struggling. I can relate to it. I've been there. I've thought about ending it. And all I can say is if you'd have told me back then that I'd be having the opportunity to sit and share my experiences with other people, I wouldn't have believed it was possible. Success to me isn't the fact that we've got a multi-million property portfolio. It shouldn't define anybody. That is not success. Success is being able to get through those dark days and be able to share the experiences with the likes of you guys. And if it's helped just one person, then I'm very happy.
Give her one massive round of applause. Ellie Mckay.